Hi and welcome to another edition of the FG Personal Training Podcast, and this is part 2 of debunking common gym myths. I brought some notes with me today as well, as I don't want to mess up some of that important information based on some of the points. So today covers a little bit about
training myths and sort of like things about body composition as well.
Yeah. So the first one we've got on here is weightlifting for kids. Is it dangerous? So that's the first question. And I train quite a few kids, quite a few athletes, the youngest actually being 6 years old, and then sort of anywhere up to like 12, 13, 14, 15 at the moment. And it's the most common question I think when they start is weightlifting dangerous for kids? And I think this has come from a lot of interesting studies, it's created a lot of interesting debates, it's come from a lot of biased points of views as well over the years. It's kind of a myth that I owned up having to debunk or answer a lot of questions about. And I think it's sort of the first question. I think once people are in, they know it's kind of, they're here and they know what they're going to get.
Yeah.
But again, I've got children who weightlift here. I've got if you look at my FG Personal Training Instagram, there's a tennis player on there who's doing clean and jerks. Yeah. Yet she's a member of a gym and she can't use any free weights.
Yeah, it's very strange, isn't it? I think a lot of it stems from just like, say, non-valid research and just like false information, isn't it? I think it's like the fear of, or there's almost this myth that because they're younger, they're almost like instantly they're going to be way more like prone to like getting hurt, which like there might be some truth to that, but really like it's just a mini adult, isn't it? Like, yeah. Why would that mean that they're going to be at a much higher risk of injury? I mean, the one of the things I've seen is like they're at higher risk of like damaging growth plates and sort of stunt their growth. Although when you look at like any movement like a deadlift, a bench press, none of them really put that much stress on those growth plates, or in terms of the only way you can really damage it is through like a stress fracture. And with like, as long as things are being done correctly, yeah. Like if you've got a good coach and things are being done like correctly, like I say, there's probably very little risk of you damaging those growth plates, and so there's probably not going to stunt your growth at all.
And it all comes down to load management. So I have a little form that I do with my kids. It's a monitoring template. And the figures don't mean anything. So basically you get a number at the end of each week. So you get a load number. So they'll do, like, say for example, I've got my tennis player, she'll play a tennis session, and what she'll do is there's 2 numbers. So the duration of the session in minutes, so it might be like 60 minutes, yeah. And how hard RPE she thought it was. So she might have said that was a 10 out of 10 session, so she'll get a score of 600. Mm-hmm. Now that number doesn't mean anything. It just gives us an idea of where the heavy weeks are, the medium weeks and the low weeks are, so we can kind of gear our session. We train on a Thursday based on that number, and it's all about load management with the kids. So obviously I'm not going to get a 6-year-old in 100 kilos on her back, squats. It's all about load management and it's about movement. And I think where a lot of coaches go wrong with kids as well is they take the fun out of it. And S&C doesn't mean, does a kid need a tailored, or do they need a programmed 4-year cycle plan? No, they don't. Yeah, no, they don't. Yeah, no, they don't need that. They just need to get moving. And actually, like, I think you saw the video that I had with my 6-year-old. She's doing an obstacle course in the gym,
yeah.
And stuff like that is perfect for strength and conditioning. But does it mean that, like, some of my 12, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, I've got a couple of 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds in the gym, like, can they be lifting weights? Of course they can. And it's just about load management, as it is with anyone. Like, you wouldn't get a raw novice adult into the gym and be like heavy back squats, heavy deadlifts, heavy lunges. So it's the same thing, and it's one of the things I got. And I've got an interesting stat here. So there was a study done on kids and injuries, and this study, I believe, was done. So it was done by the British Weightlifting Association, and it was done by a guy called Brian Hamill, and he's done 100 participant hours. So the results were shown below. So resistance strength training, so for every 100 participant hours, there was 0.0035 injuries. In weightlifting for sports, there was 0.0017. There was 6.2 injuries in soccer, so football. Basketball, 0.3, and football, 0.1. So I think that's American football. So you can see there that actually they were the lowest form of injuries. And he's got here, so both these studies clearly show that supervised weight training is safe for youngsters. There's also another one done by the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association, so in a 21-month study. It was carried out between 9 and 10-year-olds who engaged in a regular strength program. And there's a quote here, so it says, on one occasion, the bar slid and fell on the thighs of one of the subjects following a lift. It was a clean. The child complained of transient, non-specific pain in the anterior thigh and sat out for 5 minutes. He returned to train within the same session when the pain was resolved and had no further complications. Therefore, it's felt that no additional medical evaluation was required. The calculated injury rate was 0.055 per 100 participant hours. So that was a study done in 2002 in Australia. So it just shows you that actually the injury risk is so low. And of course we can do growth monitoring and stuff, but again, they're rules of thumb. So how do we know that it's going to stunt a child's growth? So it's right saying, oh, that child was going to be 6'9", and because he's done weight training, he's now 5'10". Yeah. But let's look at genetics as well. Let's take into fact genetics. If they've got short parents, they're never going to be 5'10". Yeah. Look at someone like, and this brings us onto our question, sort of like we can cover now, the misconception of body types. Like when you wrote that down, I was thinking of like sportsmen that are well known. You think of Tyson Fury. Yeah. Have you seen his family? They're all absolutely massive. He is going to be a big guy. Yeah. Like he's not going to be a small dude. Yeah. And it's just stuff like that. And you just think you've got to take genetics into account here. Like, is a weight training program for him? He's 6'9". Is he going to stunt his growth if he'd have done weight training as a kid? Probably not, because his whole family are absolutely massive. So I think this misconception of kids can't do weights. And again, you said about a study, didn't you? But
yeah, I mean, there's exactly. So a lot of the studies where like they've reported like it say like stunting their growth. It's like when you look at like where they've done these studies, it's in like really deprived areas where the kids are like malnourished and they're like working like 10-hour days as well, and they're only youngsters. Like, and it's just like, well, obviously doing additional weight training isn't like it's just like it's stupid. Like they're not eating enough. Of course, they're not going to grow. So yeah, it's just a lot of the studies that you see, just a lot of crap involved with it. And I think a lot of people, they just kind of they see a result of a study and they just take it at face value, like, oh right, maybe kids shouldn't lift weights, or but really there's a lot more to it than that. And like you say, when you look at the actual like injury rates in sports, they're more likely to hurt themselves playing football, playing rugby, playing basketball, than actually coming in here under like a supervised coach and just learning movement patterns. And I think another thing is sort of like why a lot of people might say that there's no point in kids lifting weights. And again, this is maybe has a little more truth around it, because they're still developing. Like, is their body really gonna adapt the same way as, say, a fully grown adult will? So someone who's gone through like puberty, probably not. But it's still a good time to learn the movement pattern, so that when their body can adapt, they don't have to go through this long process of learning how to deadlift or learning how to clean and jerk. And they've already done that in the younger years, where they're more susceptible of learning. So why not use that time appropriately and like teach them how to move? Because nowadays, like PE lessons as well, they're not very good, are they? Like,
well, and I think that brings it back to what I was saying about loading. You just monitor loading. You're not saying to a 6-year-old, right, do a deadlift. But I would say lifting weights. To me, lifting weights could be a broomstick, as long as you learn the movement. Like I say, PE now, I think actually PE in primary schools is probably better than it ever is, because it's PE, it's physical education. It's if you look at long-term athletic development, this is another thing that I was going to touch on with the kids. Long-term athletic development has become a new thing sort of in the Western world sort of over the last sort of 20, 30 years. But before that, you had everyone in the Western world knows that we follow the American College of Sports Medicine. It's basically the Bible. And there was a yoga instructor, and he was the guy that said it stunts growth plates in kids, weight training. So that's where this emphasis on yoga and movement and stuff like that was put on the basis of kids. And that's kind of where it stopped. But the European or the Eastern European bloc, they carried on strength training. And that's why a lot of them are way ahead of us in certain sports like weightlifting and gymnastics and those kind of places, because those kids did weightlifting and stuff. But yeah, with terms of loading and stuff, is an unloaded bar, a 10 kilo training bar which you have in here, gonna kill a kid? No, it's not. So I think again, it's this thing like people go weightlifting for kids and they think weightlifting is heavy, but actually, like you say, education, and that brings us on to our next point: muscle DOMs. Does it mean you haven't worked hard enough? Well, I'd say no. I had a guy in on Friday just gone, and we did Olympic weightlifting session. I was teaching how to Olympic weightlifting. He probably went home and didn't feel a thing.
Yeah.
But what he learnt in an hour was probably more than he's learnt in the 200 sessions he's already done with me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people come to the gym and they expect like a real beasting, and they almost feel like, well, I don't really eat too much, like I must not have worked hard enough. But really, like if your body, like really why you weigh, because it's just muscle damage. The more muscle damage you create, the more you're probably gonna feel it the next day, or like feel muscle soreness. So if the session just didn't create a lot of muscle damage, then you just probably won't feel it. But just because you didn't create a lot of muscle damage doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't a successful session, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So if you're, like you say, you're trying to learn how to Olympic weightlift, then like you say, there probably isn't going to be a lot of muscle soreness, because it's probably going to be very light loads if it's your first or second session. So you probably won't feel too much. But if it's like you're in the middle of like a hypertrophy block and it's like really high volumes, and the whole soul and purpose of it is to create as much muscle damage as possible, you're probably going to be pretty sore. But I think people are under this impression that if you don't feel sore, then you haven't done anything, or maybe I didn't work hard enough. And it's just such a myth, and people sometimes push themselves too hard because of that, because they feel like, I'm just not working hard enough anymore. And another thing you need to remember is, if on your first session you do, 3 sets of 10 back squats, some lunges, blah, 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 and you do like a lower body session, and the next day you're in bits, and you've never done this sort of training before, it's because your body it's not used to it. It hasn't ever adapted to it. Now, 3 weeks down the line, and you do the same session, you might think, I'm not aching anymore. Well, it's because your body's just adapting. Right? It's just adapting to the stimulus you're providing it. So if you want to feel that like muscle DOMs again, you'll just have to create more of a stimulus. So.
And let's talk about like a really, really simple method. And most programs follow the basic principle of progressive overload. Now, if you're progressively overloading the body, of course you're going to get muscle soreness, because, like you say, you've made the adaptation. Your body's gone through the gas principle, so you've made your adaptation. Your body's now used to it, so you have to overload it again if you want to get the next adaptation.
Exactly.
That's where you get your muscle soreness and stuff. But again, like, I don't know about you, but when I've done strength training, like out and out strength training, so 3 sets of 3, 3 sets of 1, 5 sets of 5, whatever it is, I don't actually feel sore.
No.
But I feel absolutely shattered.
Tired. Nervous system's in bits. It's absolutely been smashed. And I think this is what you have to get across to some people, like your body adapts in different ways. 100%. And just because you're not sore, as in muscular, it doesn't mean that you're not tired or fatigued.
And actually, like you said, like you might overwork, and that's actually counterproductive. If you're sore all the time, that's an injury.
It's inflammation. It's muscle damage, and if you keep creating too much muscle damage and don't ever give your body a period where it can recover and fully repair tissue, then, like you say, it's kind of like a prolonged injury in a way, because you're just not allowing those adaptations to fully occur, because you're not allowing that repair stage. So it's not something that's essential, depending on what the goal is. If it is like things like hypertrophy, then muscle damage is one of the keys to in order to like create the like adequate response for it. So you probably will want some level of soreness, but it's like you say, with things like strength training, where you're just trying to improve, say, 1 RM strength, then you probably won't feel too much soreness. But like you say, you'll probably feel mentally fatigued, because it's the nervous system has to work so hard in order to produce, like, allow muscles to produce force, that you'll probably feel absolutely knackered. But you probably won't feel too sore. And a lot of people might get confused, because it's like, well, I've just done like a set of like 2 on squats, but my legs don't really feel it at all, but I'm absolutely knackered. Well, it's like, well, you've just lifted 150 kilos for 2 reps, and you've never done that before. It's like a new PR. Your body's had to work really hard to do it. So I think people get confused, and that kind of leads into like sort of talking about injuries as well. One common thing you see all the time is, as soon as someone, say, like gets injured, so whether it's like a muscle injury, straight away you're told to put ice on it. And I mean, we both know there's not really a lot of research to really support it, really. Like, I don't really know where the stigma comes from, but I mean, we're talking about, I think I heard you talking to one of your clients about it the other day, just saying like there really isn't that much research to support placing like ice or cryotherapy in terms to in terms of like healing injuries. Mainly because when you with injuries, your body goes through like a natural process. You've got 3 stages. You've got like an inflammatory stage, then you've got a repair stage and a remodeling stage. So the first stage of an injury, as soon as you hurt yourself, your body instantly goes into this inflammation stage, and basically your body's trying to increase blood flow to that area of injury to get as many white blood cells to that point to try and basically see what the hell's wrong. And as soon as you put ice on that area, it's almost creating a block. You're decreasing blood flow to that area, and now these white blood cells can't get there. You're almost making like a blockade to the site of injury, and you're prolonging the inflammation process because you're not allowing your body to go through that process fully.
And I think as well with ice stuff, it's like paracetamol or ibuprofen. It's a painkiller.
It literally is.
It kills the pain, and again, it's hard. We said about cryotherapy and stuff. It's hard to research the feeling.
Yeah.
Because you might go, we might do the same session. We might have the same RPE. We might perceive we've got the same amount of pain.
Yeah.
You go into a cryo chamber, come out and go, I feel absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I might go and come out and feel, I absolutely feel worse.
Yeah.
And it's hard to research that because it's personal preference.
It literally is.
And it's very difficult to, it's hard to research pain because everyone's pain barrier is different. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I injured my foot playing football in PE. And I went to the hospital because my foot was double the size. And they said, out of 10, how bad's the pain? And I was like, 5. And it's like, well, it's not that bad then, but my foot was double the size.
Yeah.
And I think for me, if you've got a higher pain threshold, it's very difficult to monitor that pain. That's why the research is backed up. But one thing I do want to direct people to is Ben Foster, the footballer. He does a podcast. It's called the Cycling GK. So he does a podcast where, and he had a guy called Gary Lewin on. Okay. So Gary Lewin was the physio for Arsenal and for England for like 20, 30 years. He's now got a private clinic in London. But he was talking about healing rates. Mm-hmm. And he was saying that everyone has a different healing rate, but your healing rate is the same.
Yeah.
So he said, no, when people say, oh, we can help you heal quicker, he said, that's a myth. He said, you can't heal quicker than your body allows it.
Yeah.
Some people heal quicker than others, but that's a personal thing.
Yeah.
He said, all they can do as a physio, and obviously within football clubs and stuff, they have the best of technologies and the best of facilities. He said, they can give you an ideal environment to help you heal, but you can't speed up someone's healing rate. Yeah. And I think again that's where the biggest myth of like ice comes from, of put ice on it, you'll heal quicker. Yeah. Well actually if your healing rate is a slow healing rate, you can do what you like to it.
Yeah, that's so true as well. And sometimes the best form of like treatment is just moving a bit more.
Yeah.
Like there's countless studies that shown like comparisons against say like icing injuries, and literally just getting people just to move a little bit more after they hurt themselves, and literally simply just by moving a bit, pain-free. Like there's a lot of research to show that just by doing that you actually reap more benefits from that, because you're not prolonging that healing process. You're not like delaying the inflammation. So just by moving, you're just allowing your body to do what it does naturally, like you say. And like you say, it's going to be different for everyone. So like you say about the pain, as soon as you put ice on it, it kind of just numbs your nerve endings. So it kind of like your body can't quite sensitize, like can't feel that pain sensation. So it almost feels like, oh yeah, no, that has made it better. Yeah. But really, it's just you've just kind of numbed the pain, really. Yeah. And as soon as that wears off, you're like, actually, no, that is really quite still sore.
And what is pain? Like pain is there for a reason. Like it's there to stop you from doing any more. Like you hurt, or that hurts, so you stop moving it. Yeah. And the amount of times that, I mean, I've done it myself. I've been competitive in the sport. You get a bit of an injury, and it's not an injury that stops you, but it's a pain. Like your foot's double the size. Yeah, yeah. You take some ibuprofen and carry on. Yeah. But actually, what are you doing to that? Because you can't feel the extra damage that you're doing. Pain's there for a reason, and pain's actually a blockade to stop you doing stupid stuff.
Yeah, literally, yeah. As soon as you feel pain, it means something's not right, pretty much. So stop whatever you're doing because something is not right. Your body doesn't like it. And yeah, like I say, as soon as you take something that numbs that pain, your body now can't sense, or you can no longer sense, well, am I doing this? Like, say if you've hurt your ankle, am I doing my ankle any good now? Like, probably not. Yeah. And as soon as that pain relief wears off, it's probably going to be way worse, because you might create even more pain.
And let's go back to like the DOMS thing. Like, what's the difference between pain and an ache? Well, like sometimes you might ache after a session, and you might have a little bit of soreness, but is that a pain? And as you said, like, keep moving. So it's one of the worst things that people do is they go, oh, I did a heavy leg session yesterday, so I didn't move all day. Yeah. It's like, that's the worst thing you could do. It's going to it's going to delay that.
That
process.
Literally, just go about your day as normal, and just move around, and even try and move a bit more if you do feel like say like aches and pains. Just try and move those areas a bit more, as long as it's pain free. If you move around a bit more and it makes it worse, then potentially it's too much movement, and maybe you need to back off slightly.
And then you've probably got the distinction between an injury and an ache.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
Like if it's aching and you start moving and it goes away, it's probably an ache and a bit of soreness. If it's as you're moving, it's actually getting worse. Then you've probably got an injury, and then that's where you kind of distinguish what is pain and what is a bit of soreness, a bit of an ache after sort of a heavy session, whether that's a weight session or a sports session. Yeah. Or even if I know when I moved house, I was aching for 3 days because you're just moving a lot and it's constant. But yeah, is it a heavy session, or is it an actual, I've actually buggered up my shoulder or whatever? Yeah. I think that's where a lot of people struggle. And again, it's just being aware as a coach as well. The amount of people I get in here go, I've got a bit of an injured shoulder, but I'm absolutely fine. Yeah. Well, then you're not fine if you've got an injured shoulder. So it's just monitoring that as well, I think, from the coach's point of view. And then last one, so we always cover 3 myths and a misconception. So body types. So I'll let you kick off on this one. Is there such a thing? So I think I touched a little bit earlier on the whole Tyson Fury thing. Like a lot of it's based on genetics. Like Tyson Fury is never going to be a small dude because just look at his his gene pool. Yeah. He's not going to be a small guy. But is there a body type? Is there such a thing? Can you train into a different body type?
Exactly. Yeah. So I remember when I was in high school in PE, we got taught there are 3 body types, and you're either one of them. Yeah. So you're either a mesomorph, which is typically like wider shoulders, narrow waist, quite muscular developed, doesn't hold too much body fat. And then you've got an ectomorph, who is someone who struggles to build muscle, very narrow shoulders, narrow waist, narrow rib cage, and again doesn't hold very much body fat but can't quite build muscle very well. And then you've got an endomorph, who is someone who's wider shoulders, wider waist as well, and typically holds a bit more body fat but can also build a little bit of muscle. So I mean, just that principle alone just kind of sounds a bit stupid. So it's like, so you're telling me just because someone has narrow shoulders and a narrow waist, they just can't build muscle? It just from that standpoint alone just doesn't really make sense. Like, there's not really, like, there definitely are categories where people will have like narrower shoulders, narrow waist, but that's just bone structures. That's just, like you say, like Tyson Fury, his bones are obviously just way bigger than the average human, hence why he's so tall and so much like bigger than all of us. But why would that, just because of that, why would that say limit someone's potential to build muscle, or how much body fat they can store just because they've got larger bones? And
I think it's key in the sport where you don't see it in maybe like tennis and football and stuff like that, because most of them as a rule are a similar shape, and like gymnasts as a rule they're small. Jockey as a rule they're small because that's what it requires. But I think in where you see like rugby, where you've got different positions that require different body shapes and different body styles, and combat sports where you see different weight classes. Like, is Tyson Fury ever going to be 12, 10, 9 stone? No, he isn't. Is a 9 stone guy ever going to be 15, 16, 17 stone? Probably not. But and if they are, they're going to be massively overweight. Or these guys that are huge, they're going to be massively underweight. But there's definitely a genetic. You definitely have a genetic makeup. But like you say, this thing of, like, I would say someone like Tyson Fury is a key example. Like, he's one of them ones. He carries a lot of body fat. But actually, I've seen him a lot fatter than he is, and I've also seen him a lot more lean than he has been. So actually, his bone structure is big. He's a big dude. But does that mean that he can't be one or the other?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where I get confused. I've heard it before where people literally get told, like, you are this body type, and there's not really a lot you can do about it. It's just like, just unlucky or whatever. Let's say it's an endomorph, and it's like, sorry, but you're an endomorph. Like, you just always will like hold more body fat. And it's just like, you've just kind of told someone that let's say their goal is to lose weight. You've just kind of told them, like, you've almost given them an excuse for, maybe I just personally just can't lose weight, which just is completely false. Like, that's not true. And what about if someone is like 2 of them? What about if someone is quite narrowly built but holds a lot of muscle mass? They're almost like a meso-ecto, say. But there isn't that category. It's these 3 categories and no others. So I feel like there's kind of like, there's a guy, Mike Israel, he's had a really good video sort of explaining his sort of point of view, and I think he puts it into sort of 3 categories, which is sort of bone size, fat mass, or adiposity he calls it, and muscle mass.
Yeah.
So how much fat do you hold, how big are your bones, and how much muscle mass do you hold? And they are and that kind of makes up your body type. So you're not one of these 3, you're kind of made up of these 3. So it's how much muscle mass do you have, how much bone mass do you have, and how much fat mass do you have.
Yep.
So if you're really lean, have a lot of muscle mass, and have big bone structure, you would probably look pretty jacked, pretty much, and you'd probably be the typical mesomorph. But and if you're someone who has like a smaller bone structure, more body fat, and little muscle mass, you'll probably be the classic endomorph. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't change, because if you were to lose some body fat and build some muscle, you could quite easily become a mesomorph, which that's why those 3 body types are kind of a bit crap, really. And it's a bit of a bad way to.
It's a bit of a label, isn't it? And I think we live especially currently, we live in a world where people are looking to you're looking for a label for yourself. And like you say, that label then can be used as an excuse. Yeah. But also people are looking to label you, and it's quite easy to go, you're an ectomorph, you're an endomorph. Yeah. But actually, I think your body type is what you look like now. Yeah. Like if you are holding a lot of muscle mass and very little body fat, then at this moment in time, you could label yourself a mesomorph. Yeah. But if you then hit the burgers and stuff and stop training, hit the burgers, hit the pizzas, hit the drink, you're probably going to become an endomorph. Yeah. So, and I think that like I said, I'm a big believer in you can train yourself into a body type. Yeah, 100%. But we all have a genetic makeup and a genetic code.
Definitely. Yeah, genetic, and there'll be genetic limits. There will be, for some people, there will be a limit of how much muscle mass they can hold, and there might just not be too much they can do about that, unless they were to go onto some form of anabolic or some form of hormone. So, and that might just be a limit for some people, and other people might not have a limit. So, I mean, like a lot of the strongman guys, I know Eddie Hall, he was talking, he's got this, what he calls this Hercules gene, which basically means he is able to hold on to more muscle mass than the average human being. Yeah. So he is just genetically gifted in the fact that his body doesn't really have as much of a limit in terms of how much muscle mass he can hold, and he's probably on a lot of anabolics as well. But I mean, or at least he was when he was competing. But I mean, he just genetically is a little more gifted in the sense that he can just hold more muscle mass than the average human being. Yep. But then there'll be like the flip side where some people just might not be able to hold as much body fat, and there's so many variables. Like you say, you can quite easily go through those body types. Like you could one day be an ectomorph, then build loads of muscle, become a mesomorph, and then, like you say, later down the line, maybe you start eating too much and not training, and you become an endomorph. So, and
I also think that doesn't match up to weight either. People look at it and go, well, it must be. If you're an endomorph or a mesomorph, you must be heavier than, say, an ectomorph. But someone like a Peter Crouch, he's 6'7". To compare that to someone who like an Anthony Joshua, who's also 6'7", they look completely different in terms of body shapes. And I'm assuming that Anthony Joshua would weigh more because he's carrying more muscle mass. But I bet you Peter Crouch isn't a light fella. Yeah. He's 6'7".
Yeah, he's got probably a lot of bone mass, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. When he was playing professional sport, he would have been strong.
Yeah, 100%. He would have had a good amount of muscle.
But he was an absolute beanpole. Yeah. So you looked at him and gone, you could look at him and go, he's an endomorph. Yeah. Because you looked at him and gone, he's skinny, he's narrow-shouldered, narrow-waisted, skinny legs. He's an endomorph, but he's 6'7". Yeah. So if he was, it wouldn't surprise me if he was 13 stone when he was playing. Because you look like he's a giant. Yeah. But that's what I mean, and I think this is where again the myths come in with the body types. Is body type means weight, but actually, like especially with bodybuilders and stuff, that there's a lot of water, retention, and there might not be a lot of mass there. They might look physically big, and probably like you say a lot of anabolics as well going on. So actually, what are they made up of? And I think, like you say, bone mass is another thing. Like we hear this story about big boned all the time. Is that a myth as well or not? But bone density and muscle density is definitely not a myth. And I think there are some people I know people who are just dense, they're just heavy. Yeah. But you'd look at them and go, oh, they're beanpole. Yeah. But they're dense, they're strong. And then there's other people that I know who look huge and maybe would be a classic mesomorph, but probably weigh the same as the guy who's a beanpole. So it doesn't take into consideration height, anything like that. And like you say, genetic makeup as well, I think is a big.
100%.
And I think that is a good place.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's a good place to end it.
Good place to end it. So that was part 2, guys. Part 3 will be coming up again shortly. We've still got loads of myths to debunk.
Yeah.
And obviously keep your eye on further podcasts.